Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. My special guest today, Congressman Steve King from the 4th Congressional District in Iowa. Steve, thanks so much for joining me.
I'm happy to be here, Aaron. Thank you.
It's just great having you on the show. When I was very young, and I believe this is in your district, my father used to he was a chemistry professor, and he used to get grants from the National Science Foundation. And one summer I spent at Iowa State in Ames, Iowa. I think I was probably 7 years old.
Well, you've got roots anyway there at Iowa State, and we're really proud of that school and that institution. I represent Ames and Iowa State in the United States Congress, and I just find that the faculty that they put together and the approach that comes there, I'm impressed with what they do. So I'm a little surprised that you didn't stay, but I'm glad you have some roots set there in Iowa State.
I ended up going to eventually another lesser university in New Jersey, but I could not make it back to the corn quite as quickly as I wanted. So let's talk about, you are a very prominent member, of course, of the U.S. Congress. And I'd like just kind of philosophically today, your thoughts on what does it mean to be a conservative today?
Well, first, it's not that easy because a lot of Republicans want to label themselves as conservatives, but then they want to be able to back up and use their pragmatism. There might be what you'd call progressive conservatives, but I've marked this thing out this way as that I want to be, and it's just it's in my bones, it's in my convictions, in my heart and soul, to be a full spectrum constitutional Christian conservative, and I don't have to work at it. It's a gift, and I'm thankful for it. So I chair the Conservative Opportunities Society, and I've done that for a dozen or more years. Bring in high-profile speakers and kind of direct the thought for the couple dozen other conservatives that are at the table, and just keep anchoring that back to those principles. But in the end, though, the breadth of our conference, I would say that there's maybe, I better not start counting numbers, but it's a small percentage that are pure conservatives, and most of the rest of them are pragmatic conservatives. All
right, go give me a rough split. What percentage really are pure conservatives today? Is it 10 or 20%?
I think that you might say that 10 or 20% probably doesn't miss it too far. And it depends on what issue you want to judge it on. But what I'm judging it on right now, as I'm thinking about it, is how many of them are willing to vote for amnesty for DACA recipients and destroy the rule of law forever. Too many, and not enough will say on principle, I'm opposed because there's no way to say no to the next group, the next group, the next group. And when you grant amnesty, you're sacrificing the rule of law. So that's where the major debate is these days. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm going to guess that it's a smaller group of people, and they don't see it with. I was a great friend and a fan of Phyllis Schlafly, and I often read her material without knowing she'd written it. I just see the title, I like it, I read it. Who wrote something had such utter clarity? Phyllis Schlafly, over and over again.
American Eagle Forum and all.
Yes.
Sure.
And so.
Out of Illinois, your neighbor.
Well, yeah, and it's on the St. Louis side, actually, but she's, she's passed away now a couple of years ago. But I think I've got some of what she had, and I picked up some from her and developed my own. But I think we need to always be breaking this down to solid, principled, conservative thought. Need to anchor it in biblical values and constitutional values, and then identify the pillars of American exceptionalism and refurbish them and restore them. That's what I try to do, and I think that's a definition of conservatism.
So, and you mentioned the DACA kids, for example, which is a big issue. The president pretty much terminated that program, but then said he would sign legislation to keep the kids here. I think what's fascinating about that is because some of the principles you articulated and how the interplay, and I'd like your thought about that, because certainly from a rule of law perspective, if a law is passed, were to be passed by Congress, which allowed the DACA kids to stay here, then they would be within the concept or the rubric of the rule of law, number one. But also in terms of the issue of charity from a Christian perspective, where these kids, as you know, were brought here for the most part at an age where they had no control over where they were going, whether they were 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years old or whatever, and have lived here and have known their lives essentially as Americans the entire time. How do we be charitable to kids in that situation And do we have the capacity as a country to find it in our hearts to accept them, to welcome them officially, given the fact that they're undocumented today?
Well, boy, that's a, first I would say that I was the first one to get my hands on the DACA data. And there were 817,000 and change DACA, individual DACA recipients, whether that be original or that extensions. And so of those, it took me months to dig down into this. 14 million sheets of paper. I had to send a team, I went with them over to the USCIS to get them finally to release that information so we could dig down and pour through it. It isn't fully analyzed yet, but there's some things I know from that. Yes, there were 3-year-old girls that were carried across the Rio Grande River by their mother that didn't have anything to say about it, and it wasn't their fault. It's also true for a 3-year-old son or daughter of someone who committed a crime that got put into the penitentiary, when the crimes of the parents do disadvantage the children, even when it's not their fault. If we are willing to send the parents home because they clearly have violated the law, then we're breaking up the family. If we don't send the kids with them, they've also violated the law. And so I want to restore the rule of law. And some things we're not thinking about is, say, for example, there are 3-year-olds that were brought over, but out of that 817,000 that are the DACA recipients, there's at least 135,000 who came over here at prime gang age recruitment. And that's 13, 14, 15 years old, 135,000. And this push to expand that up to 18-year-olds, that adds another 66,000. So,
right, I think that's where you end up getting to close to 1.5 million.
Well, they do, yeah, and the president said 1.8 million was his target number. But if 200,000 of them were prime gang age recruitment, and they're coming from the most dangerous countries in the world, the highest violent death rates in the world, of the top 10 countries that have that statistically suffer the highest violent death rate, 9 of the top 10 are south of the Rio Grande River. And in fact, 10 of the top 11 are south of the Rio Grande, and one of them is not Mexico. We think so, but it's not. Mexico is, their violent death rate is, let's see, 3.5 times higher than that of the United States. They're one of the safest countries south of the Rio Grande, even though they've got all those drug deaths. But when we bring in young men from countries that have the highest violent death rates in the world and bring them into enclaves in the cities where MS-13 is there to recruit them and welcome them into their cities, whichever city it might be, we're just begging for bigger and bigger problems. And so that's the really bad downside to it.
So in that vein, 2 things. One is clearly there's this tremendous pressure from the South, the countries that you mentioned, including Mexico, but in terms of violence, certainly much higher rates of violence in other Central American, South American countries as well. What do we do for the families trying to come here to escape what is happening in those countries? I guess 2 questions. How do we help those people who really do have a rational and reasonable and justifiable basis for seeking asylum, where they know that if they stay where they are, they could be raped, they could be murdered, whatever the case may be. How do we try to take care of those people, number one, in terms of the legal process to allow them to be here? But number 2, what else can we do to help within those countries? Are there efforts we can make that will help those countries control or reduce the extraordinary level of violence that they're experiencing?
Well, I've been to Guatemala to help with their judicial system down there, and they have a major problem with rape in Guatemala. They have a 24-hour court that just constantly adjudicates these kind of crimes that we're talking about here. There's a lot that we can do in the U.S. from our State Department side to lift these other countries up. And I don't believe that, in fact, it's just statistically impossible for us to drain off the despair of the world and put it into the United States and think we fixed it. I mean, a lot of times we're just transferring the despair. And then on the other hand, who's going to be back in those countries to fix those countries? I had the Speaker of the House of Romania say to me, "How do I get to America?" And I said, why would you want to come to America? You've reached the pinnacle of a career as the Speaker of the House. And he said, there's nothing for me here. The country is falling apart around me. We can't, you know, I'm in despair. I can't fix it. I just want to go someplace where things are good. And I think Miami is a good place. So,
Miami is a good place.
Well,
But,
yeah.
I mean, there's certainly millions of people who want to come to the United States for those reasons. And,
Right.
many do, and there's a legitimate path for that. But separately, the people who are being persecuted, we have other avenues for those. Should we expand those avenues? Should we help those people more, or should we tell them, you know, we're sorry, we can't accommodate you? And
we have this problem with the credible fear language now that is being exploited by the coyotes. And the coyotes in Central America and Mexico have turned into this, like travel agencies. They go out and recruit in the neighborhoods and say, we can get you into America for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000.
right.
And so that's not going to bring us the kind of people, and they get a script on what to say. I have a credible fear. It'll be verbatim, one after another after another. We've got to shut that off because it's, but the other side of this is, let's bring our values to them. And if we do that, we're helping the ones who would come here otherwise and the people that would stay there. But who's going to be left in these countries? Who's going to fix Romania? Who's going to fix Guatemala, El Salvador, if we empty those countries out and bring them up into the United States and put them in enclaves and we replicate the place they came from in the enclave that we have? And so, you know, I'm for pushing American values out and lifting people up out of the third world. And I think that's the best investment of our dollars that we can have in this topic.
Oh, I know we have to go to a break, but give me an example of what you think would be the most valuable action we can take to bring those values and to help people in their countries as opposed to addressing the situation here in the United States or at the border.
Well, I would point out that, you know, it's curious that those countries, Mexico and South, they don't seem to want to hold their people there. They want to push them through and push them up into the United States. Why? Could it be that they aren't as good a people as we're told they are and they know and we don't? I mean, that's got to be a question to be examined. But then another part of this is that we have all these DACA recipients here in the United States. They got a free education paid for by the taxpayers, money borrowed from China, by the way. So we borrow money from China to educate children from Guatemala and El Salvador and Honduras and Mexico. And then you know, we deal with this situation here, and then they've got major problems in their country with nobody to fix them. So maybe the other side of the break, I can tell you a very interesting approach to this that nobody's talking about that I think would be the best possible solution we could devise.
All right, well, that'll keep everybody on their seats, so we'll be right back with Congressman Steve King in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
Used by fire professionals around the world, Fire Ice XT Spray is an eco-friendly, easy-to-use suppressant gel designed to quickly and efficiently stop and contain all kinds of fire and heat-related events, including fiberglass, lithium batteries, and other combustible up to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit for use in your home, office, RV, fireplace, boat, kitchen, and garage. For more information on Fire Ice XT Spray, visit us online at fireice.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch The Aaron Harper Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch The Aaron Harper Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harper Show and
keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. I'm with Congressman Steve King. So, Steve, one of the things we were just talking about are the DACA kids, the illegal immigrants who are here, undocumented immigrants who are here. One of the analyses, one of the many analyses that have been done of the people who are here who are undocumented, and the numbers range with 10 to 12 million people, and I think a lot of Americans don't realize how many people are in the country and have not gone through the system. But the criminal statistics done when those people and their behaviors analyzed, the consistent conclusion is their level of criminal activity is lower than most Americans, and the rationale or the basis is that a lot of people who are here who know they're not here legally are very afraid of being arrested, of being deported, and so they actually conduct themselves in a better manner. Nevertheless, when you have 10 or 12 million people, you're going to have people who are murderers, you're going to have people who are rapists, etc. So, you had an idea in terms of a solution. I'm very eager to hear this because I haven't heard many good ideas on what can we do that will really make a difference.
Well, I didn't say you were going to like it, but it's an idea that nobody else has pitched. And,
all right, tell me.
And first, I do want to say off of that data that that immigrants commit fewer crimes. I believe that's true when they're green card holders, when they're on a path to citizenship. They're protecting that path to citizenship. And so, but if they're illegal aliens that are essentially in a deportable category, John Lott in Arizona brought some data together that is completely opposite of that. So it's worthy of people to look at that. But
we will look at it and we'll put something on the screen.
Yeah.
People are seeing it now, but go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. And thanks. But here's where the different way of thinking about this is, and it's going to take a little bit of a narrative. But in 2005, my wife and I went to a hotel downtown D.C. Gloria Arroyo, then the president of the Philippines, gave a speech. 4 or 5 members of Congress there, but not 2 members of Congress really. And she said, "Thank you, America. Thank you for sending your military to our islands in 1898. Thank you for sending your priests and pastors. Thank you for sending 1,074 Thomasites to our islands." They were the teachers, and we transferred, when in the Spanish-American War, we kind of inherited the Philippines, and so we transferred American values over there. And she said, "You taught us English, you taught us free enterprise, you taught us a work ethic, you taught us a faith, and you established our educational system for us. 1,074 teachers unified the Philippines because of the common language, the work ethic, the free enterprise economy, and the curriculum. And we handed it over to the Filipinos before the Second World War. So in less than 50 years, that all happened." And she said, today there are 8 million Filipinos that travel anywhere in the world they want to go, and they send their money back to the Philippines, representing X% of the GDP. So, okay, that lays the foundation for this. Now, think, we have 817,000 DACA recipients. All of them are unlawfully present in America according to the Constitution. Whether you want to agree with Barack Obama's policy or not, I'm agreeing with Barack Obama. He couldn't do that. He told us that. So all of them are unlawfully present because of the Constitution. Most all of them came in unlawfully and committed the crime of unlawful entry. If they go back to their home country and then apply to come in and tell the truth, they're facing a 10-year bar before they can be considered to be entered into the United States. That's kind of harsh for some of them. But if they went home, 817,000 of them, or maybe 750,000 to pick a number, then they go there with an American education. Almost all of them, regardless of what the rest of them say, almost all of them are bilingual. They know English, they know Spanish, and they know what it's like to live in a country where things work right, and they've got an education. And so isn't that like 750,000? Oh, by the way, those 1,074 Thomasites, which were the teachers in the Philippines, that was the precursor to the Peace Corps. And since that time, we've had 250,000 or so Peace Corps workers traveling all over the world. They don't know the country they're traveling into. They don't know the language. They don't have a family. They go there and resourcefully help that country. And we always appropriate without any fear because we know they're doing good wherever they go. So what would 750,000 quasi-Peace Corps workers going back to their home countries where they know their home language in most cases, where they have familial relationships that are there, what would they do to lift those third world countries up to be first world standards? If we can move the Philippines into second world or maybe even knocking on the door of first world in a century, what could happen to Mexico and Central America and parts of South America if they had the benefit of the cream of their crop?
Coming back. All right, we're going to take a quick break and I'll explain to the Congressman the flaws in his plan.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
Join me and watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. This is our final segment in part one of our special two-part series with Congressman Steve King. So actually, I like your idea. I think it needs some modification, however, and I think factually some massaging. So first of all, certainly out of the 750,000 kids, many of them don't know their native language. So I think that's an issue, but many do. Second, many of them don't have families or don't have familial relationships back in Mexico or wherever. Their families are here in the United States. But certainly there has to be a percentage of that 750,000 that meet the qualifications that you described. And even if it's only 10%, that's still 75,000 people. Now keep in mind the Peace Corps, which I think is a great concept. The idea of Americans being ambassadors, I think that's something we should expand. But at any one time, do you know how many members of the Peace Corps are out in the world?
7,000, roughly 7,000.
Right, 70, only 7,500. When I ask people that question, most people think it's 75,000 or 200,000 or whatever. But maybe the answer to what you proposed is to do exactly what you are proposing in the context of the Peace Corps. And what if we funded the Peace Corps, had a separate program So if we were to have literally a sub-program of the Peace Corps, because the Peace Corps certainly organizationally is structured it has a process to admit people and to evaluate people, to send them out. Because of what's happening in the world today, the Peace Corps is very attuned to security issues, and a number of these countries, as you pointed out, have very serious security issues. The Peace Corps doesn't want to place somebody in a position where it's dangerous. Maybe they buddy up people, or they do things, especially if you're talking about people who are in their, I don't know if you'd send people who are in their teens, but maybe later teens, the older ones that you're talking about, and if they're with an adult or part of a group. I think that would be a great way for America to have a positive impact and to put a number of these kids or younger people back into their countries, as you described. And maybe if they provide X number of years of service, whether it be, I guess Peace Corps is usually a couple years, I think. Yeah. But let's say we made it a 5-year, expanded to 5 years. So by the time they finish their effort, they'd be young adults or in their 20s, and then have the option to return. I think that would be a very impactful way for America to try to help some of these countries.
I think there's a place that we could get on this, and I want to save the rule of law in America, so I can't support rewarding people for breaking it. But on the other hand, I think there's a great big wave that could go help these countries out, and I travel into these countries. I've been to some 70 countries in my time in Congress, and I go to the worst places in the world because I need to understand how bad it is in relation to how good we have it, and then what we can do to help lift those countries up. And I'll go to a place like Mexico, or say Haiti is another one of those examples. I know what to do to fix the country up. Haiti needs a sewer system and potable water everywhere, and they need electricity and services and streets and all of that and schools. I can figure all that out. It's hard to find the money. I can figure it out. But what I can't cure is corruption. I mean, that's what drags these countries down and keeps them in the third world. It's the corruption. The corruption's often right at the top or very near the top. So these countries need reformers, and they need reformers in big enough numbers and true enough believers that they will infuse themselves into the political system, and they will hold to those standards that keep America as far above this corruption as we can be. And for the most part, we're not a corrupt country. We are a rule of law country, a country that when we find corruption, we root it out right away instead of electing it to office and letting them become dictators. So it takes a lot of reformers to do this, and about 80% of the DACA recipients are Mexico. So I don't really like that ratio, because if we're going to fix all of these troubles, we need more of those other folks. But I talked to the president about this topic as well, just on a phone call here sometime back, and I think he understands what I'm saying. But he also pointed out to me that he said he's got to convince 500 people, meaning the House and the Senate, just a general term, and that I don't have enough support for this idea. So perhaps a few more people will think about this and add some more good ideas, and we'll end up with a little more support.
Well, and maybe one of the ways to do it is to propose it, as I suggested, as an adjunct to the Peace Corps, and begin a process. You won't, and just have, take your idea, and if you do it in that concept where everyone can say, well, that's a system we've already developed. It's a system that already works. We're not inventing anything new. We're simply budgeting accordingly to be able to do this. And you start, if you started with just 10,000 people, you could have an impact and then maybe build up to the kind of numbers you're looking at. So this is the end of part 1 of our special 2-part series with Congressman Steve King. Make sure you watch part 2. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.